Today I'm with Stephen Scanniello here in the Heritage Rose Garden. Stephen, you have been instrumental in helping with the development of the roses here. And can you just tell me what exactly a heritage rose is?
A heritage rose is a rose that's been around for a very long time. In some cases, those roses have been growing in people's gardens for 500 or 600 years. We have a wide range of those roses here, and people often refer to them as old garden roses or antique roses.
So tell me, what is so special about this garden?
Well, this is one of the only gardens that I know of in the East Coast that is dedicated entirely to heritage roses, the antique roses, which is really important because those roses do very well in this climate, especially up here in Hartford, Connecticut.
So Stephen, do you have any favorites here in the garden?
Of course I do. They're all my favorites. But there are several that really stand out, and this one in particular, Madame Isaac Perrier. And
Such a lovely name.
It's a great name. I love her because of her fragrance. She's what we call a bourbon rose, and it's probably Victorian era or that time period of rose breeding. And you'll notice is that there are bees here. The bees are attracted to the fragrance, and they're pollinating in the center. So it's a beautiful rose.
So even though some of the blooms are past, they're starting to fade, I see quite a few buds still.
Yeah, that's right, because this particular rose, this rose will bloom again through the summer. Here's another bourbon rose that I truly love. It's called Zephyrin Drouin, and it's actually a climbing plant. It would do very well against a wall, but in this situation, it looks great in the bed. And if you do some deadheading, which is removing faded flower buds, it will bloom pretty much through the whole summer. And I'm just clipping off the old flowers and some of the yellow leaves that are unsightly.
Now, Stephen, as you're doing this, I can't help but notice there aren't any thorns on the branches. They're absolutely smooth, which, I don't know, I think that's pretty unusual for a rose bush.
It sure is unusual, and it's actually one of the reasons why I love this rose, because I don't draw any blood when I'm pruning.
Right,
It has no prickles, and actually technically it's prickles, not thorns.
Oh, good to know.
And it's one of the few roses that has no prickles and is beautiful as well.
Oh, the color is just spectacular.
The color is great, and the fragrance is wonderful.
So I think it's so unusual that there's a rose without prickles, but are there any other unique roses here in the garden?
What I consider the most unusual rose ever to be discovered is the green rose. And the green rose is a rose that has the look of leaves. Every petal of this rose has reverted back to sepals. The sepals are the protective coating around a flower bud. This rose was once upon a time pink, and that was about 1830 when they discovered that a branch of the pink rose produced a branch of totally green roses. And that happened in Charleston, South Carolina. And it's a rose that has great significance, a lot of history attached to it, a lot of rumors. One of them is that it was embraced by Quaker gardeners, especially up in Baltimore. And up there are family legends that connect this rose to the Underground Railroad. So I think it's appropriate that we have it growing in Hartford, so close to the home of Harriet Beecher Stowe.
Right, so even though it's not the showiest of the garden, it definitely has historical importance.
Yeah, it'll get quite big when it's happy, and one of the charms of this rose is that it does bloom through the entire summer. You may not realize it's blooming, but it's in bloom. There's one more I'd love to show you. It's a really interesting flower. It's in French they call it the Chapeau de Napoleon, and for good reason. If you look closely at the flower, when the flowers are closed, you'll see the sepals have the look of a French general's hat.
Oh, it's so unique, that fringe. I can see that there.
It's what we call a moss rose, and the moss rose is another type of heritage rose which evolved from the ancient cabbage roses. And if you look closely at these blooms, you can imagine there are at least 100 petals in those flowers.
Oh, you can tell by the size. Those are just gorgeous.
And we call them cenifolia, which means 100-petaled rose, or cabbage roses.
And I understand you've counted, yes.
I have. I've done it. I've taken these roses apart and I've counted every petal.
Stephen, do you have any tips or advice for somebody who's new to gardening and wants to start growing roses on their own?
Absolutely. And the first thing is to make sure you pick a site that has sun all day long. That's the most important. And then next to that, you need to have a really healthy soil. And it would be a soil that drains well and has a lot of organic material such as compost, manure, leaf mold. In fact, my preferred mulch, which is another good tip, is a mulch helps maintain the moisture around the roots. I use a mulch that is from shredded leaves, and then it gets turned back into the soil, adding to the organic content of the soil.
And it looks nice too.
It does look nice, yeah.
Stephen, thank you so much for sharing all of your great tips about roses and everything that we need to know about the Heritage Rose Garden. And thank you for visiting with us here at Elizabeth Park in Hartford, Connecticut.